All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. This is Michelle Wedderburn for Casa Elm and Hacienda Elm. I'm super excited to have my guest, Dr. Jackie Bouvier Copeland, tonight. She will be here to share her personal experience with having her mom here in San Miguel, what that looks like, and the series that we're going through this whole month in terms of my Wind Down Wednesdays is to bring awareness to aging, aging in community, what that looks like in Mexico. And last week I spoke about just kind of like the experiences that I've had on a personal level. And I want to also bring guests on to talk about their experiences. Next week we'll have a psychologist on that will talk about just what aging looks like in terms of mental health and things like that. So this is a passion project as well as just something that is super near and dear to my heart and really important. So I'm very excited to have Jackie here tonight. So welcome. I've known her for a few years.
Have
She's
you made?
amazing. She's amazing. I will let her give an intro of herself, but I just want to do some really, really quick housekeeping. I'm not going to keep this too long because a lot of times I'm kind of like blah, 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 blah. But I do want to say welcome to Michelle Watson. She is my official tea sponsor here at Casa Elm, and I really appreciate you for being that because everyone that comes and we try your wonderful product, they love it. So if you haven't already seen her somewhere online, it is Michelle Watson, and her brand is called Ingenuity, like TEA, and Spice Company. You can find that on her website. She has also a book, which I will again save that for next week just because I don't want to have Jackie waiting too long, but I'll drop the link. And as I always say too, if you want to know more about Casa Elm, Hacienda Elm, please go to the websites and just check out what we're about. CasaELM.com is my guest house space. I have been here for almost 4 years, and we help people have soft landing experiences in San Miguel de Allende, which is in central Mexico. So if this is your first time here, welcome. If it's not, please make sure that you share and continue to share. If it's something that you enjoy, thank you. I appreciate you all. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. And without further ado, I want to introduce Jackie. I'm going to read this just so I don't miss anything, and then you can add or correct me. So Jackie Copeland, Dr. Jackie Bouvier Copeland is an internationally acclaimed entrepreneur. She's a philanthropist, singer-songwriter. We've had the pleasure of having many of wonderful concerts that have happened here in San Miguel. She's a producer, certified master life coach, and interfaith spirituality counselor. Did I get everything? Also, a longtime caregiver. Go ahead. I'll,
Yeah, I
I'll
think
let you.
so.
I'll let you, Pat. I'll let you tell the rest. So, needless to say, we love Jackie, and I'm just honored to be able to know you, and also to be able to be a part of this community that we all share together with so many amazing, interesting people that live in San Miguel. That's one thing I can say about the community here is you just never know who you're rubbing a elbow with, right? And or rubbing shoulders with in terms of just what is their background. I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of really interesting folks. And for me, it's just a creative pot and a place where people come and they're already amazing, but then they're able to express themselves in creative, artistic ways. And that's pretty much how I've gotten to know you over the years is through your singing. So thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. I really, really appreciate you.
Well,
So
I appreciate you. Love you too. Um, you just do great work here. You are certainly a leader in the community, and
thank
I'm
you.
always happy to support your good works. They come from the heart and are done with a lot of expertise and professionalism. So happy to be here. Really blessed to be a part of this community. I will share a couple of things that I sometimes forget because I've had a 45-year plus career. I used to run senior services for almost 70,000 seniors
Oh,
in Silicon
wow.
Valley.
See, I didn't know that.
Housing, advocacy services at the Catholic Charities in Silicon Valley. And I've been a family caregiver since I was in grade school at some level. Used to volunteer at nursing homes. Professionally, I guess, and personally, I am a caregiver. And my mother, I've been taking care of my mother for about 16 years when she was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, which also comes with Parkinson's. And she has quite a few additional ailments. And I moved her here in January 2023, and it was one of the driving factors for actually moving from the U.S. and living in San Miguel. I don't know how much, Michelle, you want me to just get into the story, or you have some questions
I do
that
have
you want?
questions. I do have
Okay.
questions, but we always kind of do the free flow before we do that. I just want to say really quickly, thank you all for jumping on the live chat. If I don't respond, that's just that I don't want to interrupt the conversation. So I'll say welcome really quickly to Khadija, of course, Michelle, Miss Ingenuity, Cheryl, hi, buenas noches. Thank you so much. Cheryl was just here. Appreciate you. Lisa, same. Welcome. Julie, welcome. So yes, we will see you next week at Casa. So thank you all for being here. Tonight, again, the focus is to talk about what aging looks like in San Miguel and Mexico in general, the cost, what you've gone through, what you've been through, what do you feel like the pros and the cons are. So I will let you flow, and yes, I do have questions, but we'll just kind of jump right in. So go ahead and continue. And if anyone gets in, just be patient. I will acknowledge you probably somewhere in the middle or the end of the interview. Thank you.
Okay. So for us, dementia is a progressive disease, and it doesn't stop an individual from contracting other ailments. And so I've been trying to help my mother deal with a whole range of brain and other health issues now for almost, actually, most of my life, but especially the last 16 years. We were in the U.S. until 2023. And the deciding factor for me there were several, and I'm just going to speak very transparently. My mother was a nurse working in nursing homes for most of her career. And our family had an unfortunate experience with my grandmother being abused in a U.S. nursing home, which is not unheard of. And so our family had had an agreement that we would try to avoid nursing homes for our elders, that we would either keep them at home, have in-home assistance, or just come up with some other method. And then additionally, my mother having worked in that system, to her, that was her worst nightmare. She made me swear in blood that I would not. She was like, baby, don't you ever put me in one of those nursing homes. I worked there. I worked in one. And so I agreed. And so she got to the point in her dementia that it was very difficult for me personally to have her in my home, even with assistance. And it was increasingly unsafe for her. I have two siblings, and they also found it difficult for her to live with them. I have been living and working across the world, I guess, since I was 18 or 19 years old. So for me, having a second home outside of the U.S. wasn't a great leap of the imagination because I had done it before. Let's just say 2016 was a pivotal year because I saw some handwriting on the wall and decided it was time to find that second home abroad. I visited Panama, Costa Rica, Belize, Peru, and Mexico. Had a friend who is from the U.S., but also from Mexico, who had built a house in San Miguel, visited her in 2021, fell in love, and decided that San Miguel was the solution. Because I like the city, I could have it's like a family care home, a second home that just wasn't built for my mother. I built a house here, but also I have other seniors in my family. My mother has had 4 siblings, and increasingly they're getting ill. So the home is also a place of respite and recovery for my extended family. Moved my mother here, had a small studio apartment for her in my house. Her condition got much worse. I chose to live in a community called Los Labradores, which also has, and I moved here in part, built my house here because I knew that they had senior services. In fact, they have senior housing that includes independent living, assisted living, and advanced memory care. So my mother lives 5 minutes walking from my house in Labradores in a facility called Cielito Lindo. It actually started off as an assisted living apartment, but just 6 or 7 months after she moved here, she had to be hospitalized. She had to actually be taken to the emergency room and contracted another major illness that causes paralysis. And so she was very happy to have, quote, her own apartment, and then she got ill. And so in addition to the facility caregivers, I had to hire 24-hour care in her apartment that was bilingual. So I'll get to some of the pros and cons. I think Mexico, like many other countries and cultures, has a reverence for elders that is also common, I believe, I actually know, in both Black communities across the world. And even my mother, we lived in California once. When I told her, well, Mom, we're moving to Mexico, she said, that's great, because those Mexican people know how to treat their elders with respect. and so the family, although they were, they felt it was a radical solution, they've all been here. They agreed that it was the right decision, less concerned about elder abuse in a congregate care setting here than we were in the U.S. My mother's care is very expensive in any country because of all of the different ailments she has, but it probably cost me about a third of what it would cost me in the United States. Because we had this family agreement around no nursing homes, because she's in an assisted living apartment where I brought the care to her. I have kept my promise, and that makes, in her lucid moments, she recognizes it and deeply appreciates it. She's in a very comfortable environment. Another pro is that I have unfettered access to her. It's not like some care environments in the U.S. where you have to make an appointment to see your loved one. This particular facility does have holistic services in terms of they feed them. Although my mother's from low country and I fry a lot of fish and I make a lot of cornbread. And
She has
so she
demands.
will, she has, and although she's mostly nonverbal now, she still knows how to say, "Baby, that's nasty. I'm not
Oh.
eating it." And so I actually have some assistance with cooking because that was getting a little daunting, making all these special meals into the wee hours of the morning. And so for me, I have more support here than I would in the U.S. with my siblings all living in different states and they work full time. And that's very important. I feel like I can have a life here. Mostly retired. I can still travel because I trust the services that I'm receiving from my mother. Some cons and sort of a checklist of issues that I would watch out for. It's very important to have bilingual assistance, which can be rare here. Most of our elders do not hear or speak Spanish, and especially for elders with some sort of cognitive or brain health issues, it makes it much worse if they cannot understand what is being said to them, and that can create outbursts, anxiety attacks, and even worse. So that's very, very important. I think in any care environment, although I have met many people who have moved their parents here and they don't physically live here, that wouldn't work. That wouldn't work in our family. And I do think some degree of regular monitoring, even if one needs to hire somebody to do that for them here, is really, really important in any care environment, especially one where you're not from the culture and you're not fluent in the language yourself. It's really to have somebody who can monitor and guide the caregivers to your standards, your family, and your cultural preferences. And sometimes you don't know what they are until you encounter them. I will say that there seems to be some growth in senior services in San Miguel, and our Michelle is one indication of that. So I do think there are more options available now than even when I moved my mother here in 2023. And I may have made some different choices as opposed to building a house, with an apartment in it. But truthfully, the way the social, political, environment is evolving in the U.S., I definitely made the right decision. My family has some other options. I would say, for most of us, we're aging as our parents age. I'm 63 years old, and because of the support I've been able to put together for my mother, I'm actually better able to sustain my own health here in Mexico than I was in the United States. And that's for a whole variety of reasons, and I can answer any questions about that. So that's the situation in a nutshell. Sometimes I can't get the exact food or health and hygiene products by brand that I want here, but I can certainly access everything my mother needs. And in fact, there are some conveniences. Doctors here will do house calls for $100 US essentially, which is absolutely wonderful because my mother has difficulty even being a passenger in a car right now. It physically hurts to sit up that long, and so that's been fantastic. I've worked with several very good home pharmacies that do home delivery, which is very helpful, not only of pharmaceuticals, but also, I would just say, various medical supplies that she needs. Like if I need, I don't know, a particular seat for the shower or anything, these same pharmaceutical or pharmacy companies can access them. If they don't have them in storage themselves, they will shop as far as Mexico City and access them and deliver them to me, and that's really helpful as the manager of my mother's care. So there are more pros, I would say, than cons. One challenge is my mother has some very explicit final right requirements. She does not want to be cremated, and she wants to have her homecoming service at her home church in Philadelphia, and have her remains put to rest in essentially a family cemetery. I have figured all that out with the help of some people here, but that whole piece of transporting the deceased to another country from San Miguel can be complex. I've learned a lot, and I have some resources that I would be willing to share with anyone, because the convention here is cremation, which is a no-go.
Right.
And my mother's instructions, and actually for our entire family, for a variety of reasons. So,
what does that look like, though, Jackie? Because I'm curious. I know that when people pass away, at least in San Miguel, I won't speak for the entire country, but I think as a whole, they typically conduct the service the next day. It's usually within a 24-hour period of time. It's very uncommon in the way we do it in the U.S. is to, they go to the hospital potentially first, or they're already in the hospital, then they go to a morgue, and they're in a funeral home. And, sometimes a funeral service won't take place for sometimes 2, maybe even 3 weeks, depending on where you are. And in Mexico, it's that they don't really have those types of facilities in abundance. So it typically happens within 24 hours. They're cremating, as you said, they're having the service or ceremony by walking down the street somewhere in a group. So how does that look like for you to be able to transport in the future back to the United States? What kind of provisions did you have to make?
Well, there's actually a rule here that you have to be cremated. I think it's within 24 or 48 hours. So that's where the quick funeral service comes in. So we didn't want that. So I found a funeral home that's based in San Miguel, been in operation for decades, family owned, and has some precedent of doing what I call international funerary arrangements, where they can intervene, work with whoever's signing the death certificate, take the body, prepare it for transport, and ensure that it is not cremated and that the body is transported to the U.S. So I imagine they would do the same for someone who does not want to be cremated, but my understanding, it is very difficult to find a place to be buried in San Miguel, which is one of the reasons that people choose cremation. And so I suggest, not just for your elders, but for anyone living here, to start thinking about a living will with explicit funerary instructions. Find a funeral home, and I can look up the name of the one I'm working with and forward it to you, Michelle, if you want to share it.
Sure.
They're absolutely excellent. And they are working with our funeral planner in the U.S. The owner is bilingual, which helps a great deal. And I feel confident with a very, very explicit protocol in place that I will be able to respect my mother's wishes to be flown back to the U.S. and buried there. But you do have to have a plan. You can't wait until it happens, or you will be caught up in Mexican traditions and protocol around these matters. And I just can't imagine it working out the way our family wants if I hadn't had a plan, and not just an oral plan, but a written plan that I had signed off on.
Did you
So there's
have to
no.
hire, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I have a person here who's my assistant, and I had her do some research because I reached out. There's an entity here. I think is it the 100 Club that will help people with funeral arrangements here in San Miguel, but they only work with cremation. And I can't tell you how many people who were well-meaning but didn't really understand how it works who referred me to them. And I guarantee you that they do not work on helping with transport. In fact, they're the ones who referred me to, I think, 3 funeral homes that I vetted, and then chose one that I thought had the best track record and was truly bilingual and would be able to work with me and their equivalent in the U.S. to get this all moving confidently. So I prepare. This does not work like it works in the U.S.
Right, and it sounds like you don't have as much freedom to make decisions at the last minute if someone passes away. So I think that
No,
this
you
is
don't.
great
That's
advice.
why you need.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So did you have to hire, or did you hire an attorney to kind of help you with the written aspect so that it's honored and respected here, or did you just strictly work with the funeral company?
I just worked with the funeral company because they have a contract
Okay.
firm where you can kind of put what you want in it, and it's legally binding. And then I have a very good funeral planner in the United States who's on it. So I didn't feel the need. I did consult with my attorney regarding my mother's legal status and what needed to be done to transport her to the U.S. from the perspective of immigration and any related law. And that ended up being pretty easy. Once the person is deceased, there's not much immigration oversight over a deceased body. But I wanted to avoid a situation where my mother was at the airport and ready for her deceased body was at the airport and ready for transport, and then I had some kind of legal or immigration issue that I didn't even know the question.
Existed, yeah. And even with all your bases covered, I have to say it's still Mexico sometimes. We never know what else could potentially come
Right,
up, unfortunately. So it
right.
is good to have the assistant that you mentioned and people who are
Yeah.
bilingual who can communicate if those needs arise. Yeah.
Well, yeah, bicultural and bilingual. Because, you communicate and think you're on one accord, but there's just some cultural issue you didn't even know was an issue, and you don't actually have an understanding. And so I have been planning this now. It sounds a little morbid, but it was necessary to be planful. Initially, I will say I had some kind of emotional block around it. I didn't want to have to sit down and talk about this because I was still hopeful that she would be with us for longer. But I'm glad I did. I have the necessary supports in place, the agreement, a very clear protocol. It even has to get down to how do you want your deceased dressed for the transport back to the U.S. I mean, all kinds of details that don't leave much to chance. And I know that wherever I'm usually here, but I do travel. So I travel to the U.S. and Brazil mostly. So If I'm out of town, um, I will be flying back. They won't let me on the plane with her in the cargo section. I tried.
I can't imagine. Yeah, they
I
barely
will
let
be here
animals on,
orchestrating.
pets, live. You tried. They looked at
I
you
did,
from the side. They're
but
like,
I will
side
be
eye.
here orchestrating and ensuring that the system here is designed to cremate a person
Right.
and get the funeral done in 24 to 48 hours. And I know Bethlehem, I know, all about the bureaucracy here. And so I will be physically here, fly in from wherever I am to ensure that that doesn't happen.
Okay. So what kind of like support do you feel made the biggest difference for you, for your mom, in terms of moving from the US? I know you said that she didn't want to be in a nursing home, but just how has it kind of maybe enhanced the time that you have for yourself versus maybe pouring more in, because you said earlier that you felt very busy and kind of maybe a little stressed about being the caregiver because your siblings lived in other states and other places. And here you seem to have a better setup.
Mhm.
So how has that really improved your day-to-day movements?
Well, most basically, my mother has 24-hour hands-on care. I was severely sleep deprived
Mhm.
because she needed that 24-hour care before she actually received it. And the pivotal incident that became a watershed moment is that my mother, we were living in the same house. Her room or her suite wasn't very far from mine in the house. But one Sunday she fell. And Monday morning I went to check in on her as I typically did in the morning. And she just stayed on the floor all night. She didn't have the presence of mind to say, I need help. And this was in maybe March 2023, just a few months
Mhm.
after she had been happily living here, becoming part of the social life of Los Labradores and actually developing friends. She loved San Miguel. I remember her
Oh.
saying we would take her to different faith-based holidays and events,
Mhm.
like these saint days. And I remember my mom is a very religious person, typically doesn't curse. And she said, where the hell are all these people going and why are they so happy? I said, Mom, that's the St. Miguel effect. So she felt the kindness of this city and something subtle that I didn't recognize. She also said, here people speak to me. They say hello. Because one of the things that happens with people, especially people who have dementia, who may be expressing themselves differently. And in the case of my mother, the Lewy body causes tremors of the head and the hands and the mouth. In the U.S., sometimes she would be teased in a restaurant or wait staff would be impatient. And she noticed how people were more patient and actually tried to help her
Mhm.
in San Miguel. So the kindness made a difference. Basically, I would say with the additional help that I can get here as her conditions became unmanageable for one person, I was able to afford more time for myself.
Mhm.
And socialization is really important for all of us to maintain our health. And I basically was on mom and for lack of a better term, death watch. And I would kind of just stay home and look after her. And now there's just more room for me to have a life. And
Yeah.
she gets absolutely excellent, excellent care.
I love that. I actually was going to ask you how did you notice a difference in how she's treated here from the Mexican culture? But you answered that because I think
Hmm.
that is definitely one of the things we definitely enjoy as a whole, collectively, as
Yes.
foreigners moving to Mexico. It's a much warmer culture, and they definitely have a bigger respect, greater respect for elders, mothers, children. And that was definitely one of the questions that I had. Just
Absolutely.
that warmth, and I'm glad that this is her experience, because I
Hmm.
have relatives that is not their current experience, and they're older, and we'll talk a little more about that next week. But it's just again one of those things where I think, salud, where I feel that you have to see what works for you. Again, moving abroad is a big step. You've talked about this process. I do want to ask you a question in addition to that. I'll get to it in a second. But moving abroad is a big step. But if you are able to do it and you need the support for your elders, or as you said earlier, some people have moved their family members abroad for this care because maybe they're not able to care for them, and maybe they can't afford it in the United States too. That's also a factor. And this is the purpose and the passion that's going into Hacienda is to have a
Right.
space where people are able to age together in community. They have the care around the clock. They have people who are checking on them. They have people who are loving on them, and they're not aging and feeling either agitated or annoyed because they don't feel cared for. It's sort of like a burden for people that are looking after them. And that's what we want to avoid. I want to avoid it for myself. I don't want to go out feeling like I was annoying or I'm abused because I'm annoying somebody because they're not patient with me. And I do believe that Mexican culture really, wraps its arm around this different way of being more human to each other. So yeah, I just wanted to address that. So
That's
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna your comment made me think I should emphasize that I'm 22 years younger than my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now, because of my experience caring for her here, I have a foundation, an actual base here in
Mm-hmm.
Mexico to attend to my own care needs if I need.
Correct. Right.
And so almost like advanced, although I wasn't thinking necessarily of it in these terms.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that for people, it's people who are married, but for people who are single
Mm-hmm.
and don't necessarily, for whatever reason, have a child or a relative who's able to provide the hands-on care, that it's easier to get reliable care. I don't like this term, but people use elder orphans here
Mm.
in Mexico than in the United States. And it's not just a matter of cost. I think depending on who you choose for the care, the likelihood that there will be abuse
Mm-hmm.
is probably lower here than it is in the
Yeah.
U.S.
It's interesting because sometimes when I think about that, I'm not really sure what exactly it's based on. It's just something I feel. Does that make sense? It's just the way,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel that way about my child. So it's kind of the same thing. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
elders are very vulnerable, children are vulnerable, adults, but we have more of a voice. We're more, knowledgeable, experienced, etc. But elders and children, they're kind of in the same, space of being very vulnerable. And I
Right.
feel uh, less stressed out about where my child is living here in Mexico. Now, I don't want that to sound like, I'm just like, whatever, go off and do whatever. No, it's just the culture really gives a different approach to just how they interact. I think that families are a big part of why the culture is this way because they are big
Yeah.
on family. They are big on taking care of their, elder parents and grandparents and things. People live together in the same house and they go through the thick and thin. And so that spills over into those of us who've chosen to move to Mexico and adopt this lifestyle. I was having a conversation this week with a group of students who were very curious about Mexican culture. And that was one of the things that I said is that for me, the biggest love, and I've said it on my channel many a times, is the people. The people make it special. And so you're receiving this care. And the thought of like leaving kind of this feeling of more safety when you're vulnerable and moving back to somewhere where you didn't ever feel that, it just doesn't make sense. That's the reason why I agree that there are a lot more facilities like this popping up. I see them. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
Hacienda. It's not just Los Labradores where you are. That is
Right.
definitely one of the ones that's been around for a long time. But there are plenty of places that I find kind of more like the boutique kind of setup, which is what we are.
Yeah.
Much smaller, very hands-on. The individuals that we will be working with, they are local, so they already come attached to the Mexican experience. And just the individuals I've been talking to, sorting through like who's going to represent each of the slots that we have for Hacienda in terms of positions. It's just incredible, their experience and just the feeling that I feel about what they could potentially bring to the space. It just really solidifies more the intention of why Hacienda was created in the first place. So I'm very grateful that it's happening here in San Miguel.
Yes.
Yeah,
Congratulations, and they're very
thank you,
timely,
thank you.
to create it now. When you just look at the
Absolutely.
demographics of San Miguel,
Hmm.
it is a needed community service. One thing
Absolutely.
I have lived mostly in the U.S. and different parts of Africa, India, and China for a while, and I'm an anthropologist, and I will say that what you feel is an empirical social fact that the cultures, especially at the local level, I'm not talking about necessarily the big metropolises of those cities,
Right.
but at the family and maybe the city or neighborhood level, there is certainly a stronger family orientation that's about love and care in action, not just paying attention to it. And I've traveled somewhat in Mexico, but not extensively. And I am coming to the opinion, at least, that San Miguel's culture might be unique in some ways. I've read something that we were voted the kindest city in the world, not just the number one
The
city in
number
the
one
world.
best.
There is a level of kindness here that I don't know if you would find that culture in every Mexican city. I suspect not, because as a big city, Mexico City is going to be really different
Yes.
in that regard. And so I do think that I feel like it's an advantage to being in San Miguel. There's just this good Samaritan ethic that is part of the whole civic culture that spills over into, care of our children and our elders. I think my mother felt it. Certainly, I feel it as I compare this place to other places I've been in Mexico. I hope that as it becomes more of a world city, it retains that warmth and that kindness. I mean, that's really what attracts. I mean, it's a beautiful city, of course, but it was the warmth of the people, they still have a heart here in, and I do think that spills over into at least the elder care experience I've had here very intensely over the past almost, I think August will start the 4th year.
Question, what was the process for your mom to come and live here? Because I know that people in the United States, they might be concerned about that in terms of her receiving or getting her residency. I know that that's becoming more complicated. Did you find the process simple, easy for you, or?
It was a little it was complex because my belief was that one day, and maybe I'm overstating it, that Mexicans would treat U.S. expats the way we treat them. And I hate to say I'm not trying to turn this conversation into a political direction.
Understand.
But the treatment of Mexicans in our country has been horrific and embarrassing. And I was right, because I do see that residency is becoming more difficult to get now. So I was determined to get residency before I moved here. And so I went through the whole process at the Mexican consulate in San Jose, California, which is where we were living, before I tried to move here myself or move my mother, so that we would at least have permanent residency. So with all the other things I have to worry about in her care, I didn't have to worry about that.
Okay.
And then, but I actually, especially at this time, fast forwarding, 3+ years, I started the process in 2021, and it was concluded. It took almost a year, but it was well worth the effort, because I don't have to think about her status or my status. So I strongly advise anyone thinking of making this move for any reason, for elder care, for your care, et cetera, to just work on going through the process, get the advice of an attorney if you need to, and get your residency, even if it starts as temporary, secured before moving here. Because it's an evolving situation and somewhat volatile, given the quote leadership involved in our country.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I will say most of the care facilities don't require you to have residency, because I visit a lot of them. That may have changed, but that really wasn't the case in 2021 when I was doing my due diligence.
Okay, that's interesting. I never thought of that. We will definitely require that. It is a requirement, because we're a facility where we're looking for long-term residents, and I just don't want to have someone who is in need of the care. They're getting the care, and then maybe there's an issue with them being there in the future.
Right,
so
and they have to.
Yeah, that would be, I think, emotionally, mentally very stressful for that person. So that's just something that will be required. I'm not surprised that it wasn't a requirement. I think that in the past few years, things have gotten a little bit more complicated, between them canceling the regularization program. I know quite a few years ago, in 2021, I think, in 2022, they were kind of like stopping people from doing the visa border runs, the tourist visa. People who were actually living here full time, had been living here full time for years, decades probably, and then they would leave at the 6-month point, fly or go to wherever, whether it was to the south or go up to the north, and they would come back in the country and get 180 days again. So there were a lot of people living here full time on tourist visas. I know that Mexico has cracked down on that quite a bit. They've upgraded their system to be able to track it better, but I remember when I moved here in 2018, a few folks that had been living here for a long time had, had children in the country, and they basically said, oh, you just pay the fine at the airport, and you leave, and then when you come back, you get another visa. That is not the way to do it. Mexico has
Oh
changed
yeah,
quite a bit. Yeah, even going to
yeah.
school, I remember
That
enrolling Micah. Go ahead.
yeah, I said that would be a big risk right now to do that. I was just thinking about what you said. I
Yeah.
wouldn't risk it at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. So yeah. So my other question is, do you think that families should consider supported living options like what we're doing at Hacienda in general? Just the experiences that you've had for your mother, and even the cost. I mean, if you want, I know you don't have to give me exact numbers, but if you want to give like kind of a range, I know you said you're saving a third. But I don't know that a lot of people really know how much this is until they need it, if that makes sense. Sort of like a lot of folks are healthy and then suddenly they need this care and they're kind of caught because there was no plan.
Well, I can share a base average that I have seen, but remember, I was shopping the market in 2021,
Mm-hmm.
2022. I don't know how prices have necessarily changed, but um, I would say the base average was about 3,000 US dollars a month
Mm-hmm.
versus 6 to 8
In the
in
US.
the US.
Mm-hmm.
The more, you know, the more supportive services you need. Um, for my mother needs a lot of support because she's very ill. That number goes up substantially, but the number I cited is for basic services for a person who can take care of most of their activities of daily living. Um, an incontinent parent, nonverbal parent, um, a parent with some specialized medical needs. That base number, of course, is going to go up. But I still say that the same ratio of like the cost being a third less than comparable services in the U.S. is still accurate. Now, having said that, an important proviso that I wanted to mention is medications and insurance. And that's one area. So Medicare primarily works here for emergencies. And I think you get to use it for one emergency a year. And so obviously a person like my mother has to see the doctor quite a bit and has specialists. So that has been a challenge because I pay for most of that out of pocket, and that can it's still less than the U.S., but it can get really expensive. I believe there are some new insurance products emerging whereby, for example, at MAC has a program to extend the application of Medicare benefits in some instances for certain services, and it's really important to look into that. Issue with a lot of the Mexican insurance programs is my mother had too many pre-existing conditions, which can be factored in here in Mexico to get any insurance policy, health insurance policy. So that has been a challenge. Some medications are less expensive here, even though they were developed in the U.S. But then others are more or as expensive as an out-of-pocket medication purchase in the U.S. And so, know what the medications are, use generics as much as possible, try to do some advanced planning to secure Mexican health insurance before your loved ones or your health conditions disqualify you for it. And so that's an area for some deep due diligence because it has major financial implications.
That's a good point. Were you able to secure some sort of insurance at all for your mom here?
So I pocket for my
Okay.
mother.
Okay.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
just no way. I mean, especially since she moved here, she already had a variety of ailments that would have disqualified her for any insurance policy that I've looked into.
Okay. So, okay. And this is based on not just her medical, but maybe even her age. I'm not sure if that was a factor.
That may have been a factor, but we didn't even really get that far. It was just multiple ailments she had. She couldn't get covered.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm asking again, just because, my mom is aging as well. She has insurance as well in the US. Um, she's actually going to be visiting, and she's also bringing, as I mentioned to you earlier offline, my elder aunt. And one of the things I looked into was getting travel insurance for them and insurance for while they're here for those couple of months. And, I know for my aunt, she's not qualified under this particular company that I'm using for my mom because of her age. So I do think, as you said, just doing your due diligence, because if you do want to live abroad and you do want to have the care, whether it's Hacienda or any of the other facilities that exist and that are up and coming in Mexico, these are things that I think people have to think about. What kind of insurance do I need? Does the insurance I have, does it cover me if I move to Mexico? Can I get insurance when I'm in Mexico? What does that look like? Can I afford to pay out of pocket? Will my family be able to afford this? There's so many factors and so many questions. Yeah, so, right. And so I always say, don't wait until it happens to you to do something, to look into it, to make a plan. And when I say happens to you, I don't mean necessarily you as the person, but maybe you as your parents or your elder relatives that need the care, to really try to plan what that looks like. Talk about these things, it's really important to talk them through, and really important to talk it through before you, as the person who needs the care, does not have the ability to communicate clearly. I have to say that because it happened with one of my aunts who also had dementia, and it just got worse. And it's sort of like, what does that care look like for her, And eventually what happens is people make those decisions for you. They might not be the decisions you wanted or that you would like to have had. So I think it's important to just know this. Anything else you want to share? Does anyone have any questions? I want to say welcome to Iona. Hi, buenas noches. The audience is a little quiet. I guess this is more of just a discussion. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add. We kind of discussed the costs and what it looks like, the type of care that's available. I will say that Hacienda is providing a lot of the things that you talked about. We don't, right now, we are not providing care for Alzheimer's patients and dementia, but we do offer the meals, the 24/7, around the clock, aging and community activities. If there's on-call doctors and things like that someone needs, we do have that nurse, a nurse if that's needed as well, helping with managing medicines and things like this. So we do have a very full program. Although we say 60 plus, we were talking about this earlier. I think the 60, decade, it's still very active, so I think we are open to 60 and up. Clearly, that's our demographic. But I do think that it is going to be a space that really is going to be for people who need more support from a physical standpoint. So yeah, check us out. We're definitely having our virtual webinars. We're having one this week on Saturday at 11 o'clock our time here in Central Mexico. You can register for that if you are interested in learning more about our program and Hacienda Elm. Please go to the website haciendaelm.com and you can click join a presentation. And as well, we will be having a few events if you're already in San Miguel where you can join us this month for an in-person tour. So anything else you want to add? Thank you so much, Jackie.
Just that there are a couple of things. Good insurance brokers here
Okay.
in San Miguel and shop market for you in Mexico, but also the U.S. So, I mean, you can't. It's hard to know what you don't know if you don't know what the programs are, et cetera. So, I would advise somebody to find a broker and get the advice. And I know one good one. You probably know him too. We can share.
Or Alex?
Pardon?
Chandler or Alex?
I only know Alex.
Okay, yes, that's who's, yes, I have my insurance through him as well. But I had Chandler on a couple months ago. Yeah, so
Okay.
yeah, there are several people and that's something we can help you with as well. If you decided that you wanted to be a resident at Hacienda, we can certainly help you with that as well. Look into what that looks like cost-wise, based on your health, your age. I love Alex. I work with him. He's actually the one helping me with the travel insurance. So he's pretty versatile.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, he is very much.
Yeah.
The other thing I was thinking as you were describing your service, and I'm just thinking about all the wonderful people I've met in our community here. And even the research says that social isolation for a middle-aged or elder person actually causes disease and will shorten your life.
Yes.
Most likely, what the statistics say. And so I think, all of the health supports, et cetera, that you can provide at Hacienda Elm are important, but it's also those social supports and a semblance of community is really critical, especially well, I don't consider 60 old yet. Maybe I'm biased.
No,
but
it's not. It is not. And I mean, I'm just thinking about someone who might have like some physical challenges, like, they need some mobility issues. But yeah, I mean, we're both young.
Sure. But even for somebody who's 60, who's moving here, has never moved abroad, et cetera, it might be an ideal environment for them as well. Just because of the social support and, just not needing to worry about, certain issues because there will be meals, there will be activities.
Yes.
So it can be a soft landing.
Yeah, for longer term residents.
Yeah.
There it is.
And
yes.
so that's one of the reasons I think it's just such a great idea. I wish you much success.
Thank you.
And if there are other ways I can be helpful, because I've been through the ringer on these issues here, do let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish you all the best with your mom. I always ask you about her, and I can say that I'm glad that you're here and that you received the support. I saw how stressful it was for when my dad was kind of going downhill. And we were all very spread out. So we weren't able, it's sort of like I see this from this lens over here in Mexico. My dad's in California. You know, my brothers are on the East Coast. One's in Toronto, one's in Florida, the others are in Connecticut. And we're just not able to do other than talk on the phone and check in. And, you know, his wife was over there alone doing her thing as best as she could, and she did a fantastic job. But honestly, that's not what I want for my mom or anyone
Mhm.
else, you know, for that matter, myself included. In the future, I would love to be able to be somewhere where I am not a burden to someone, right?
Mhm.
And as you said, a lot of us are single. You know, I am with a child. I don't know where he's going to be in 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now. No idea,
Yeah.
right? And I don't want to place that on one person. You're solely
Exactly.
responsible for me. And you better, you know, I mean, I'm going to definitely tell him what I want, you know, but I think having options where you feel that you can feel safe and you can be loved on, honestly, this is what Hacienda is all about. I mean,
Mhm.
it's gonna be a home away from home, just like Casa Elm. It's a space where people will feel loved on and safe. You know, I will definitely be like a hawk watching and making sure things are the way they're supposed to be. It's not so big that, you know, we're losing track of issues and matters and things like that. The intention is to really create a soft, safe space for people who are aging community. Doesn't mean, you know, you're not active. It just means that if you need this support, you need this social interaction, the stimulation, the activities that we're going to create and the group things that we'll do, you know, clearly you don't have to do everything, but it's there. It will be there. Yeah, the
Right.
support will be
Yeah.
there. Okay. Mhm.
Mhm. I think it's fantastic and wish you all the best.
Thank you, my dear. So before we go, I just want to say thank you to Iona. She said, thanks for sharing your experience. Let me read it clearly. And for the conversation that is much needed, I provided for my mom and my home until she passed away. I had the same agreement not to put her in a nursing home. Yes.
Right.
And
Right.
that's a lot of responsibility, so kudos for
It is.
that. She said planning ahead, definitely the key, and it's good to know the options that are available outside of the United States. Absolutely. Khadijah, let's see. Oh, Michelle said, for you, wishing Dr. Jackie's mom all the best. Thank you. And Kadisha, thank you for your vulnerability as a former caregiver. I know exactly what it feels like to navigate the care of aging parents. Absolutely.
Yep.
Blessings. Blessings to you and your mom from Iona as well. Thank you all so much
Thank
for
you,
being
Ben.
here tonight. I appreciate you so much, Dr. Jackie. You know how much I love you and all of the exciting things I know you have going. I saw a post today. If you all didn't know, she sings. She's extremely soulful, so you can probably find some of her performances online on Black SMA, I'm sure, and other places. Definitely check them out. I don't know if you have like a website as well that people can go to.
Well, I'd like to do a little plug, if I
Sure,
can, for
please
the July
do.
30th.
Yes, please plug
So,
away.
yeah, I've been singing all my life, but I was working in another career. And when I turned 60, my birthday present to myself was to produce my first album. And I've been singing ever since. It's also a stress management coping mechanism for me.
Okay.
But join me at Santani on July 30th. I am doing basically a preview concert of my next album, which is
Okay.
called Mother Song, and yeah, a series of jazz and blues songs inspired by largely my caregiving experience.
Okay.
So do join us, and you can go to their website to RSVP and get a ticket.
Okay, so that's Cinchani's July 30th, right?
Yes,
And at
at
what
6 p.m.
time? Okay, I'm
6
putting it
p.m.
in the chat at 6 p.m. That's Central Time, well, 6 p.m. I just said for those who are in San Miguel, 6 p.m. And they can RSVP at the restaurant's website.
at the Centani website.
Okay, Chin Amis. Okay,
And that's Centani./SS. But just put it in your browser, you'll find it.
okay. Hold on a second, just in case someone's watching this after. And the name of it was Mother Tongue?
Yes,
Yeah.
Mother Tongue, an ancestral jazz journey.
Okay. And ancestral jazz journey.
And I'll send the flyer to the Black SMA
Okay, good.
community as well. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yes, I think the guy from Shinani, I forgot his name, is Giselle?
Giselle, see. I
Giselle.
mean, yeah.
I think he shared that earlier, but send it anyway. You know, we need
Okay.
reminders because there's a lot of fun things happening here. Yes. So thank you so much again. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. I really appreciate you. Make sure you hit the like button if you haven't already, subscribe if you haven't, share with anyone that you feel this is for. Visit both of my websites. Both locations are here to continue to support people that have needs, basically soft landings, family vibes, home away from home, all the things that really mean so much to me as a person. And I realize as I continue down this path and this journey, how much it ties in to my upbringing and where I come from, and from an ancestral space as well, you know, just my Jamaican culture. As I talk through each of these things every week, I realize the connections that I probably never really paid much attention to. And even with this journey of Hacienda, how much it really ties into not just myself, but the experiences that I've also had in losing a parent, how I feel about my last parent still being alive, my aunt who's going to be here, and I'll talk more about that next week, and just kind of the things that I feel people need as they age as well. So
Yeah.
I'm super, super grateful to have this platform and to live in San Miguel and live in Mexico. And regardless of all the crazy things that are happening in the world, not just in the US, but in Mexico as well, if you follow the news, I still believe in this country. I still believe in being here, and I just really hope and pray that we will find some peace and some solid, you know, solace, and just as life moves forward, just a little bit less crazy around us. I think that we're in tough times, but I also believe in the kindness and goodness of people to eventually work it out. I really do. So thank you
Yeah.
all, and stay tuned. Have a great night. Hang on one second. I'll be there with you, Jackie. Okay. It has like about a 1 minute,